Hello, everyone. Welcome to Technically Creative, our virtual conversations with Georgia Tech alum working in the creative fields. My name is Aaron Shackelford, Director of Georgia Tech Arts. And this morning, I'm thrilled to be joined by Annie Eaton, a 2010 graduate in International Affairs and Modern Languages. Annie is the CEO of Futurist, a VR, AR, XR, and immersive technologies firm, and the founder and executive producer of Amebous Labs, a gaming software company that will be opening a 4,400 square foot VR studio in Midtown Atlanta. Annie, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. I'm excited to be here with Georgia Tech today.
Well, we wish you were here in person, but I'm here in the green room and you are with us in spirit. So
yes.
There's a lot I want to talk to you about your time at Georgia Tech and your career. But just to kick things off, I wonder if you can say a little bit about, how did you get involved in these amazing technologies and how Futurist, your company, came to be?
Absolutely. So first, I want to start by explaining the difference between virtual and augmented reality, because sometimes there's a little confusion when we get into acronym soup, as I like to call it. So virtual reality, or VR as you'll hear it, is when you are, as a player or a user, fully immersed in a virtual reality headset. So it is covering or occluding your vision to the outside physical world. And you're actually seeing a 3D 360-degree environment in that headset. You can look around and you're fully immersed, and it is streaming to slightly different feeds to both of your eyes so that you actually perceive it as 3D like you would in real life. And then on the augmented reality side, or AR, that is when you have a digital overlay onto the physical environment. So you're still seeing the world around you. You just see cool little critters or information digitally overlaid onto that physical world. And you can see that either through a pair of smart glasses, wearables, or something as easy as a smartphone or tablet. And when I got introduced to this technology, which was about 2013 by a coworker at a previous company, I just got so excited. I wanted to find a way to work with it. And so tried to bring that idea internally to that company. And unfortunately, there wasn't a big appetite to explore it at the time. But that friend, his name is actually Peter, he and I still wanted to push forward and work in that tech. So we ended up first creating a community organization called XR Atlanta, which now has about 1,400 members. And then from that, we were able to branch out and start our own company. So we've been working with the technology for about 6 years now.
Fantastic. And so from this company now, y'all made a big announcement just a little bit ago about Amoebas Labs and this program. And I wonder if you can say a little bit about this. Sounds like a natural evolution of some of the work that you've been interested in.
Yes, it definitely is. So with Futurist, we have been primarily focusing on enterprise and business and large nonprofit-based projects. So people will hire us to produce an experience for their company or their organization, where we'll take their products or ideas and we'll create an immersive experience around it, whether it's for training or marketing or product visualization. And so that's all been very business focused. And we had an opportunity and really the appetite to get into more consumer focused experiences, which naturally would mean gaming. So we decided back in February to start producing our first VR game. And at that point, we realized that this was going to be a lot bigger than we had originally intended, which is very exciting, but it deserved its own brand. So we're spinning out this game studio from Futurist. It's still a division of the company, I guess if you're thinking about it as a legal structure, but it is exciting to have this new branch that's going to allow us to be more creative with internal projects.
Fantastic. So, I think a lot of our current and former students at Georgia Tech, the idea of gaming and getting into this this new, what still feels like a new horizon in gaming is really exciting. So, what have you, just in the last few months, what have you learned along the way about the opportunities and challenges of getting into the gaming industry?
Yeah, so I have learned that there are a lot more, I guess, details or considerations that go into effect when you are deploying an experience that you don't get to constantly have your hands in after deployment. So with our client work, we still have that direct line of support. If something goes wrong, we can swoop in and fix it. Or if they identify a bug or something like that, we can be pretty reactionary with that. But when we are thinking, and they're also deploying it in a very controlled environment. So usually it's at an event or a trade show or a semi-permanent setup at their physical location. But with the consumer side of things, we do not have that level of, I guess, connection with our customers. We're hoping to build a really great community, and we actually have put in place a community manager within Amoebas Labs to help foster that relationship. But we can't just, get them on the phone and say, what's wrong? Let us help you fix it, because we're hoping to sell this to tens of thousands of people, if not more. So I think just making sure we're thinking of every single little detail so that when consumers are enjoying this in their homes, they don't have a bad experience is really important, but also something that takes a heck of a lot of work to plan for.
Yeah. So we're already getting questions rolling in from some of our viewers. But before we get there, actually, I want to rewind just a second because and go back to your time at Georgia Tech. And, you were not a major in computer science necessarily, and yet here you are, you're sort of, doing this incredible work. So can you say a little bit about, how did you end up at Georgia Tech, and are there ways in which you see your experience at Tech, did lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I've seen shirts and I hear people say that they bleed white and gold, and I would say that's probably 100% accurate, since I feel like this was my destiny since before birth. I am a third generation Georgia Tech graduate. It started with my grandfather, Don. He graduated with a degree in civil engineering in 1951. So he was the first to kind of get that bug going through our family. And then my parents both actually met at Georgia Tech and both also graduated. They did something that's amazing, which is get married while they were there, take a year off, and then actually go back to school and finish. So I know a lot of people say they're going to do that and then they don't. So props to them for sure. But I've always grown up with Georgia Tech around me. I think just knowing how infectious this community is, or the enthusiasm within this community and loyalty to the school, it was pretty natural for me to apply. And my growing up in Georgia, it's an in-state school. It's the best school. And so I think that was probably a no-brainer. But I did actually apply as mechanical engineering because that's what my dad is. He's a mechanical engineer. And I said, oh, he's got an amazing career. He's doing really well, been able to be a great support to our family. So I want to do that. And then quickly realized that I am not someone who wants to do math and science every day. However, I do have mad respect to all of those who do, because it means I don't have to. But when I realized actually it was during Facet, which is like before school even starts, at orientation, that I was introduced to the School of Liberal Arts. I didn't even know it existed before that, or at least I had a little inkling, but not a lot of knowledge. And I was actually able to kind of go off with that track during orientation, which was fantastic, and really learn about it and realize that the International Affairs and Modern Languages degree existed. And it was a great program to be a part of. But my sister went to Georgia Tech as well, and she did my dad proud because she is an engineer. So at least there's one of us.
I mean, it sounds like, even when you were saying, how you first got involved in VR and AR, like you have a mindset of, recognizing these are the things that you're passionate about rather than necessarily these are the things that you were planning to do when you first got somewhere. And so I guess, can you say a little bit more about, how you sort of learn to recognize and to see these kinds of opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even explain because I don't even know if it's something that I formally learned. It just kind of has happened. And I've realized that if I do have a hunch or a gut feeling on something, it's usually a good idea, or at least it can turn into a good idea. So similar to most of my entrepreneurial friends, like we all have a very roundabout way of getting to where we are today. And I'll briefly touch on where I went from graduating from Georgia Tech with that degree to where I am now, because it is kind of zigzag and all over the place. But I graduated, it was 2010, so the job market was still recovering from the economic crisis. And I ended up being very fortunate in finding a job. I was pretty much going to take any job at that point, but a job in international human resources. So having that background in international affairs and, of course, the Georgia Tech name behind that, I was able to get this entry-level job in HR. And one of my primary roles was actually doing the logistics behind visa processing for all of our employees who would go all over the world. A lot of them were challenging places to get visas, like in the Middle East. And so that was a really interesting experience because we had hundreds of people that we would send all over the world. And then I knew that I liked working for that company, but I didn't know that I wanted to do human resources forever. And a marketing opportunity opened up, and I'm like, I want to do that. That sounds a little more creative, which is kind of hand in hand with this conversation. And so I ended up applying, and because I was already in the company, they were able to train me up to be able to take on that role. And that ended up growing. And it's actually at that company that I met Peter, who introduced me to VR. So it was just like kind of seeing these opportunities and taking them and not really questioning why I felt it was right. But I'm so glad that I did, because that ended up bringing me here. And then more recently, I've actually kind of gotten that international affairs background back into my career, because earlier this year, or actually, I guess it was late last fall. This year is just confusing to me on timing. I think everyone agrees. Recently, we were awarded the Metro Atlanta Chamber's Exports Grant. So we had identified a few opportunities for international expansion and kind of bringing back that international affairs knowledge and into the mix. We were given the opportunity to receive this grant money. So now we've been working with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the Georgia, I think it's a lot of different parties involved, but even at the state and national level, we've been able to work on international expansion. So it all comes full circle, I suppose.
Yeah, and one of the things we've heard from so many alum in these creative fields is that what you call the zigzagging, the sort of moving in these ways that you didn't predict, but you got excited about these different possibilities, and then sometimes it comes around in a full circle.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that we got was from Teddy asked, aside from the sheer coolness of it, what value do you think virtual reality brings to the human experience? In other words, what is it do you think virtual reality brings to our experiences, whether it be for gaming or so much of the other work that y'all have been doing?
Yeah, I'll probably touch on both sides of it, because I feel that the benefits, or at least what it brings to the human experience, is different. Of course, on the business side of things, we always have to think about how it's justifying the amount of money these companies are spending on it, because it is a specialty product. It is not cheap. So when we're thinking about that, it's really, how are they going to use this in the planning process? How are they going to use this as a safety tool? A lot of what we're doing is allowing people to be more prepared for their work situations. So it does have the possibility of saving lives as far as preparing people for dangerous situations. As far as the product visualization side, we've actually had experiences that have gone on to save a lot of money for our customers, because they will identify things in virtual reality that they couldn't identify on a 2D screen during the design process. So if you think about engineering, even you create these on a 2D screen, you see it in a 3D program, but it's not quite the same as actually being inside of it. And you really do notice things that only a human would notice with eyes in the room, which can be really, really helpful. On the gaming or even more immersive entertainment side of things, I feel like, especially now, it's been a great tool to get the human connection that we're not getting necessarily. I have been doing a lot of events in a program called AltSpace VR. which is a social VR platform. And it's kind of freaky. I'm like standing in a circle with my coworkers or my friends, and we're standing right next to each other. We're not wearing masks. Of course, it is an avatar version of me, but it does look like me in many ways. And I actually feel like I'm there with them, which is kind of filling that void that we're all feeling right now. So that to the human experience alone is so, so powerful. But I feel like just getting out and doing adventurous things that either aren't financially possible or aren't physically possible is something that is to be taken really seriously. And that also gets me excited about it.
Yeah, so that leads me into, one of the things, you all said about Amoebas Labs is this idea of a way to create games for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really curious, how you think about, how do you tap into new communities and audiences through these technologies that you imagine using, or that Amebous Labs is using for these games?
Definitely. Well, we're going to be announcing our first game and the name and the experience of it in about a month. But when we say games for everyone, we're really trying to include people who do not identify as more traditional or stereotypical gamers. So maybe someone who doesn't necessarily even own an Xbox or a PlayStation or a high-powered PC, which is one of the reasons we are targeting the Oculus Quest as our first release, just because of the price point and accessibility of it. But we are making games that are more aesthetically based. They're not violent games. So that was one of the things that there are a lot of shooters in VR just because, and I actually have a controller right here. It's very easy to just have this trigger and find ways to use it, whether it's lasers or something else. But there are so many shooter games out there, and there really isn't a diversity of content outside of shooting games and rhythm games. And some of those games are really fun and engaging, but they're very similar to each other. There are new ways that you can have these games in different thematic environments, but it's not quite the library that exists for PC and other console games. So we're trying to focus on categories that are not being serviced as much, and really create content that could be for everybody. It could be for any age range, any gender, any background, and really just allow people to be in that experience and interact in ways that are natural to us as humans. So it's a challenge for sure, but we're working on it, and I'm excited to be able to announce next month what we're making.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me that's one of the really exciting creative elements is, as you said, like so many video games can get stuck in these boxes, and it sounds like y'all are really trying to think a wider range of both what the experiences are and then who is invited into that literal space to experience those. I do have a question, just because we do have some Georgia Tech students. We actually have the first year students moved in this weekend and are now going through their facet or their week of welcome. What's your advice for a Georgia Tech student who might be interested in virtual reality or AR, or the sort of work that y'all are doing? I mean, there's classes they can take, but what would be your advice to a student who's interested in these fields?
Yeah, I would say definitely keep your options open outside of just classes. Some of the best developers I've seen all make independent projects, and that's a great way to really learn all that goes into it. And even if it's what we would call ugly, because people talk about ugly tech a lot, where you get the technology or the technological pieces together, but it just doesn't have beautiful cinematic graphics, that is 100% okay. No one on a hiring team is necessarily looking at how pretty it looks. If you're a developer, you're not necessarily an artist, or maybe you are a little bit, but it's okay to have an ugly product if it's a portfolio piece. I would also say look into the free resources like Unity, which is a game development engine that we use, is free, or at least it has a free version for personal use. So a lot of these other engines, I know Unreal as well, they have free versions. Definitely take advantage of that, because a lot of software doesn't have that advantage. A lot of it costs quite a bit of money definitely look into student licenses for the ones that aren't free, because a lot of times they'll have really cheap programs. And then maybe get together with some friends, find other people who are interested in the same thing as you and work together on a project, even if it's just on the side. What people are looking for who are hiring for these jobs is a lot of self-taught elements, because things are constantly changing. You're never going to stop learning in this field. You're always going to be striving to do things better. I think that that's kind of ingrained in you as you go through any program at Georgia Tech anyway. But just make sure you don't keep that just to your classes. Make sure you take that mindset outside of it and focus on some passion projects that you can use to help you in your career when it starts.
That's fantastic. We had another question from Leonard, who asked, I guess this is a little more of a personal question, but what space do you find to be most effective for stimulating your creativity?
Well, I definitely find, well, it was in my office. I really like my office, and I think I'm in my basement right now, so it's a little different, but I really find being around people helps me with that. A lot of people are creative when they're like alone and no distractions. I'm kind of the opposite, where when our team gets together, we'll just all be very collaborative and creative at the same time. But I do have one place where I do have to be kind of by myself and focus and no distractions, and that is actually when I'm writing music. So even though I run the company, I'm also one of well, pretty much right now, the main person doing the music composition for the game, which I have done personally basically my entire life since I was 4. I've played piano. And that is where I need to be siloed. And I feel like if I'm just kind of noodling around on my keyboard, usually something fun comes out and then I can build upon it. So I would say either with a large group of people at work, if it's a bigger creative session, or by myself, totally focused at my piano.
I mean, I think that's a really important point that, sometimes we think of creativity as this, artist in an attic sort of, meditating by themselves, but really a lot of creativity comes in those collaborative spaces and those shared spaces.
Yes, so it's been a challenge to work through that as being all virtual, but just like we are now, a lot of video sessions. I think it's important to see reactions on people's faces in those sessions, because you can kind of tell if it's actually a good idea or not, but just based on facial reactions. So I think having your video on, even though some people don't like it, is really, really helpful in those sessions.
Yeah, yeah. So to turn and look forward a little bit, what are you most excited about for the next couple of years? I mean, your company, I think, is one of the things to be excited about. But as you think about what these VR and AR spaces are going to be in the next couple of years, what gets you really, really energized?
I am, of course, excited about our game and our company, and also just how that's going to evolve. I look back on the things we are doing as a company, and we have about a 2-year turnaround from when we think of something and it actually comes to life. And that's kind of been the case the entirety of our company. I always joke with my co-founder Peter, because he'll come up with some like crazy idea, and then about 2 years later someone will actually ask for it and we'll sell it. So it's been a consistent 2-year cycle as far as that's concerned. So I'm excited about seeing some of the weird and crazy ideas we're coming up with now actually become reality in about 2 to 3 years. Hopefully that cycle keeps up with the timeline. But I am also excited about consumer adoption. I know there are a lot of projections that headset ownership will be about 4 to 5 times the amount it is now in 2023. So that's just a bigger market for us to serve. And I think getting into our first game release, which will hopefully come out early next year, is great timing to be able to have a solid product and then be able to build and build. And we're going to take that into account, all the consumer feedback in our community, and making sure that we're constantly listening to what the people want and working towards that, but then adding our own spin on it.
So I love the vision. I love that trajectory that you all are imagining, and it strikes me like it's it's so entrepreneurial and it's so, constantly adjusting and being adventurous. And I'm curious, when did you first think of yourself as an entrepreneur? Like when did that identity become part of your work and your identity?
Yeah, I feel like it was when I was a kid. So not even as an adult. My sister and I were always coming up with ways to make money. And yes, we did have like the lemonade stand and everything. And she was into pet sitting and I did babysitting, and we had a whole little empire going on in the Eaton household. But when I was in high school, my mom and I actually started a handbag company, or at least like these little drawstring backpacks, but they were like very fancy looking. And we actually sold a lot of them at like craft fairs at the high school and like churches and stuff. And that was a pretty fun, I guess, more formal way to make money as a kid. And she's always been very creative and very entrepreneurial herself. So I feel like having that and the true, like, you can do anything mentality in the household growing up really fueled that for me. But I was always doing things. I would cut hair at Georgia Tech. In my dorm room, like I'd cut people's hair and like just do all sorts of weird things. So I feel like it was always just a part of the hustle. And then that upbringing and that mentality just carried through to my professional career.
It's fantastic. Well, we have two last questions. One is one we ask everybody, which is, what is your favorite Georgia Tech tradition?
Ooh, there's so many. I was in marching band, so I got to be a part of a lot of fun traditions, or at least be like front and center on it. And I know that there are so many different traditions people could choose, but I feel like the one that really got everyone going was the Budweiser song. So at the football games, and I'm not going to sing it for you, but you'll, if you're listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. It's just so great when you hear that just like boom bump, and you're just like, everyone just like gets up at once, and it's not even sports related. It's just everyone together in this stadium just bouncing up and down like a bunch of goofballs, and watching the away team and all the away fans like, what the heck is going on? Like, that is just the best.
I admit, as a newcomer to tech, that was not part of my orientation, so I did have to Google that when that first came up.
Yes, you're like, what's happening?
What is going on? And finally, last piece is Omer, a student, actually asked, are there internship opportunities with Amoebas Labs, or if somebody is really interested in y'all's work, what are ways in which they can get involved, or can you at least keep an eye on what y'all are doing?
Yeah, so we are actually full on interns currently, but we are always looking for new ones in future semesters. So I would actually say probably, and I may regret this, but add me on LinkedIn. You can find me pretty easily, Annie Eaton. I look like this in my picture. And just make sure you include a note with your LinkedIn connection. I would say for any students listening, if you're trying to connect with someone who may seem unreachable, if you include a personal note, it is way more likely to get read and also responded to. Also, another piece of advice on the LinkedIn front, if someone doesn't, I guess, if they add you and they don't necessarily respond right away and it's been a few days, like, don't be afraid to send a follow-up, because they just bump down, 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 down. So be persistent. Again, I may regret saying that later, but it's advice that I would give to myself. And then if you want to stay up to date with Amoebas Labs, on our website, amoebaslabs.com, which is AMEBOUS labs.com. We actually have a sign-up form, and you can get our newsletter as well as opportunities to get filtered into our playtesting groups and surveys. So definitely add your email address there, and hopefully I'll see a lot of you someday soon.
Excellent. Well, Annie, I thank you so much for the conversation today. I want to thank everybody who's joining us on Facebook today. We hope you all come back and join us on August 24th when Technically Creative catches up with Matt Molthrop, who graduated with an MBA in 2004, and he is also a third-generation woodturner who strives to blend both tradition and innovation into an art form that honors his legacy and creates a new one. We also hope that you would consider supporting Technically Creative and all the work we do here at Georgia Tech Arts with a tax-deductible gift. We also appreciate your support so much. And visit our website at arts.gatech.edu for more information. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week.